Does ageism really a factor in the hiring decision, particularly of executives? Does it exist a little bit? Does it exist a lot? Is there something we can even do about it? Or can we actually not only combat it, but turn it around and make it work to our advantage? If you want to find out more, join me today. That's going to be the hot topic. Welcome to the Dream Job America podcast. I am your host, Tim Tonella, where we talk about strategies, tools, and tactics for helping you find your next dream job. Now, today we're going to talk about an issue that can be somewhat sensitive and somewhat debatable. It has to do with age bias and the question of whether it is really real when it comes to hiring, particularly those at an executive level. And it's kind of interesting, my firm, we did a poll a couple of weeks ago, which we had the largest number of views and one of the largest number of respondents. Over 500 respondents participated in the poll directly, where we were asking executives if they thought that age bias was a factor in the hiring decision of an executive. And an astounding 79% said yes, very often. Another 14% said yes, but somewhat infrequently. And a very small percentage, like 5%, said they didn't think it was really an issue at all. So you think about that for a minute. Almost 93% of all the respondents thought it was very, very likely or only slightly likely, with the bulk of them believing it pretty much exists in almost all the hiring decisions. Now, I don't know if that is true systemically. I think on an individual level, there's a lot of things that factor in. But the fact that so many people believe it is, the perception that it is, does make it a reality. And so what we're going to talk about today is how you can actually turn the table a little bit and better prepare yourself to mitigate against any of those factors if you think they're actually something that's impacting you as you're going through this process, or you think it could and you want to be better prepared. Now, again, this is designed more for higher level executives, and it's designed around how to prepare yourself to build that narrative and build that case so that you're discovered and that you're not turned down before even getting called back. Because this happens a lot. People come across a LinkedIn profile, people hear about your name. Search firms and companies are, exploring different candidates, and they see you, and they will make decisions both consciously and subconsciously, and they may just kind of move on. In some cases, not even really thinking consciously why they're doing that. It could be a photograph. It could be something they see in the language you use. They don't really know, but it can exist. And so the focus for today is not tactical, such as what do I do when I'm in an interview so I seem youthful and energetic and creative and all those different things that would actually be benefits to you. But we're going to focus more on kind of a macro issue is, how do I prepare so that I get called up and I get that initial engagement where age is not a factor at all. And in some ways, they may even look at it as a benefit. So if this is something that you think is valuable, something you want to learn about more, hey, we're all getting older. That's just a fact of life. So it's going to hit us at some point in time. Then come on and let's get rolling. So one of the first strategies we're going to talk about, and I think it is the most important, and again, it applies to anybody at any age looking for a job, but I think as you're an older executive, for example, it takes even more importance on, and that is, number one, you have to become or be perceived as an authority in your space. It could be in your functional type of role, or it could be something that you bring to the party in terms of a process or knowledge where you're perceived overall as being not only an authority, but maybe one of the leading authorities in the space. And so what's really important about that is we're not talking about necessarily being credentialed, because a lot of people say, hey, I've been working for 30 years. I've done what I've done. People think highly of me. But if nobody in the world really acknowledges that, nobody kind of sees that day to day, you're really not building that feeling of an authority. Now, in social media, particularly with a lot of younger people today, we talk about the impact of influencers. And you think about it, influencers don't necessarily have to start as authorities in their space, right? They could be someone that just starts talking about something interesting. They may not be credentialed. They may not have gone to school. They may not even had a lot of experience. That's kind of the absurdity of it. But whether it's because people like the information they're bringing, they've done research, it's just good old common sense, or there's something in the personality or style. You could be watching them. It could be through Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, or we'll say TikTok. We'll throw all those different options in there, all of a sudden they begin to gain followers, they begin to gain traction, and all of a sudden as that happens, they become quote unquote influencers. And so this is what we're talking about. You don't have to be an influencer in the terms that you have millions of people following you, but you're putting things out in the public domain where those that do follow you, whether it's large or small, over time they start to recognize that you're really an authority. And when people start hearing about you, or references are made to you, or people discover you, right? They Google you, and what are they finding? Over time, they start to develop the sense that, hey, this guy is really something unique in the space. They've been around. They know what they're talking about. They've got a lot of deep domain expertise and knowledge in a certain area. That is the most important thing. You think about it for a minute. We make decisions all the time where we would gladly go to the oldest person in the industry because they have all the wisdom. They're the sage. And you think about it. You're going to see a doctor, right? Maybe that doctor is 75 years old, but he or she has been like on the forefront of a particular area of science. And even though they're old, the knowledge, the experience, everything that they've been through from the beginning, the evolutions that they've seen, you can't wait. As a matter of fact, you could be backlogged months to get an appointment with that person. You see the same thing with private coaches on the athletic field, with professors, with business leaders that are in their 80s that are still doing it. You'd die to have a meeting with them, right? You're not even thinking about their age. As a matter of fact, in that sense, their age is actually a benefit, because when you start thinking of them, you think of all the decades, everything that they've done, and you feel grateful to have an opportunity. So that's what we're talking about doing. Now, the next question we're going to focus on is, how do you actually do that? So it's going to start by, you have to have a strategy for putting yourself out there in the public domain. There's no other way to do this. I mean, you can't just hope somebody's going to call you up one day, look at the company you work for, you just tickled to death and you're going to be the person. Now, that can happen if you're kind of a rock star in the industry, but again, we're not talking about exceptions here. We're talking about more of the mean people who have been around, they've had success in their industry, in their space, they're looking for something new, sometimes in a different area, and they're having to start that from scratch. So how do you go about doing that? Well, of course, if you can get speaking engagements, if you can go to conferences where you're well known, that's always great ways for adding street credibility, for people having a chance to get to know you. But more likely, you start with social media. In this particular case, we're probably looking at LinkedIn. And so I've got another video which we talk about how to build kind of a structured LinkedIn profile that's going to get you noticed by people. We're going to dovetail on that a little bit, but the bigger picture is, you have to be thinking about, what can I put out there that adds to credibility, so people learn about what I've done in the past and they see that I'm really kind of on the edge of the envelope and I'm doing things new. So a couple things that you can do in LinkedIn, as we've mentioned before, that are really, really important, is you're going to have to start showing consistency. You're going to have to start showing up in the public domain for people to get to know you. It's not enough to do one thing and hope that people happen to see you, because people see you at different times. They may, if they see something in a feed for the minute, they may never see that again. They could just be busy. You may put something out there that somebody doesn't see today, and they see it 3 months from now because it's permanently out there on the web. You've got to really have an online presence and focus on building that daily. So one of the things you can do in LinkedIn is you can post every day, and you can post about subjects that are relevant, that show your expertise. You can engage with people on LinkedIn who are kind of thought leaders in the space, so that's recorded as well. You can write articles that would talk about the area of expertise you have, or articles that could show how you've learned things over the past decades and how that is translated into to today's time, and showing you how you've taken all that knowledge from the past and brought that forward. You can even show how you are kind of an educator in a space, helping younger people and people coming up the curve, learning the lessons of the past, but applying them in the real world. Essentially, you want to try to become somewhat of a thought leader in a space. And again, just like the influencers, you don't have to be credentialed. You don't have to be super known, but you have to make your presence available, and you have to continually communicate that message. I think today we're in the age of video, and it's a real opportunity because people really get to know you. They can see you kind of how you are. They can hear your style, your cadence, get a sense for your personality, and that just brings more interest for people wanting to know you. if they want to be part of that tribe. And so I think doing videos today, you can do videos you can post directly to LinkedIn about a subject or an experience you have, really can build that credibility. If you want to go all in, you could start a podcast or you could start a YouTube channel, a little more involved. I don't think you have to do that, but that's certainly beneficial. Another great thing you could do is you could become a guest on a podcast, and then that you could use that information to not only post on your sites, but this is all content you create, whether it's a video, you're a podcasting guest, you're writing blog posts on an independent site or posting things on LinkedIn. These all have specific URL links that you can refer people to. So as you develop this content base and this kind of sense of being a thought leader in the space, as you're reaching out and doing direct outreach, looking for introductions or going directly to the source of people who may be hiring or talking to recruiters, you have all the information that you can link to that's really powerful. For example, when I look at a profile and someone's, super techie person, right, with a great background, I love it when I see at the bottom when they show me the actual patents and the patent numbers. It just hits home. There's a reality of like, this guy's really smart. He's not just saying he has some patents, but I can actually see the patents are there, they're registered, and I know everything that went into that. I think that's really powerful, and having that information available to refer back to just adds to that sense of being an authority. Another thing that I think is really great to do that a lot of people don't do, and I didn't do much of this in the past because I was not a huge picture taker. I'm not a big celeb chaser or anything like that. I met a lot of celebs living in California for 40 years. I've never been overwhelmed by that, but as I've kind of evolved, I start to realize that that is important in creating an image. Here's a couple things you could do. If you go to a conference or you go to an event or you go to a building where there is a guest speaker and you get a chance to meet them, I know it takes a little chutzpah, but ask if you could take a picture with them, shaking their hand, whatever it is. So that way, when you put that information on your private site or LinkedIn, you're trying to make a case, you're now adding photographs where they're showing you with a variety of successful, famous people. Now, I see this all the time where it takes a political spin where a candidate, a business candidate, let's say, had gone to a political conference and maybe they met the political candidate or somebody in the government and they're holding hands, taking pictures, things of that nature. And, whether it was just a quick snapshot and the person didn't know them or not, it does create a sense of wonderment. And if you have enough of that, you almost start to subconsciously believe, wow, this guy's really, he's connected, or he or she is showing up in the right places. And so I think all that, again, adds to the fact that you have a presence in the industry, you're making the effort, you're involved at a high level, and those things really do carry through in terms of how people view you and your position in the space. The other thing that does is it really makes you memorable. You think about it, I could have a candidate that maybe not the greatest candidate, but I remember those pictures of them shaking hands with someone famous or in a certain situation, and it does stick with me. And so becoming memorable is important, but essentially you want people eventually to feel like, wow, this person's a real player in the space. I've seen them on video. I've seen who they're connected with. I've seen their achievements. I've read blog posting and read their content discussions they're having in the comments. This person's really in the game. That's someone I should speak to. And again, back to that analogy I made earlier, ageism kind of fades when you become really important in your space. If you're marginal or mediocre, then it can be a factor. But when you're top of the game, people don't really care because they really care about their own self-interest. And if they think you're a player and you can really make a difference and you're really connected, then they're going to bypass all those other issues and they're going to want to get to meet you and get to know you. So I think that's really maybe the most important thing. And it's something you can start on now, and it carries through in everything else that you do. All right, so the second thing you can do, which is similar but very different, is you need to demonstrate the strength of your network. So I think about all the time when people want rock stars, as they call them, and they come to us, they want someone that's a thought leader. They want someone that is like a real player that everybody would want to know in the space. But they also want to know people that are really connected, right? One of the biggest things in any industry is how well you are connected, because things happen based on your relationships with other people, whether it's financing, whether it's technical resources, whether it's the ability to recruit or get in the door for a new client, strike a partnership, find a new supplier. That's really, really important. And I've seen people who over prioritize that, and they literally hire people in some cases where that is the number one thing because they're on a limited budget, they need to grow very quickly, and they think rather than try to bring somebody in who's going to take time to do that, I'll bring somebody in that's more senior who's been around the block for a long time, but that time has resulted in the strength of a long-standing network, and that's going to help us get up to speed very, very quickly. So kind of a cool idea that you can do to kind of strengthen this, because you can come in and you can have a discussion, or you can say, hey, I have this great network, I've been around forever. What does that really mean? Is go through your Rolodex and think about everybody you're connected with and think about the top 5 or 10 people. Now you say, does that seem like a lot? Well, not really. We're talking about ageism, right? So we're talking about people that have been working for a long time. So if you've worked for 20 or 30 or 40 or even more time than that, you go back through and think of the 5 to 10 people that you know that are the most important people you know in terms of a public or a business profile. Again, they can be in the public space, they can be in the corporate world, they could be political. It doesn't really matter, but reach out to them and see if they wouldn't mind writing a testimonial for you. Now today, a video testimonial is really powerful. Or maybe say, hey, could we do a quick Zoom call where I get to ask you a couple questions? You could say some complimentary things to me. We're going to make it really, really short. We're talking like 5 minutes max. You could do that. Or you could have a traditionally written testimonial, and you can put that on your LinkedIn page, on your private page, but it's also something that you can refer back to. So rather than say, hey, I've got, 50 million people in my network and it's really deep and I've been around forever, if people look and they see that 3 players that you would know of, right? That's the key, that someone would know of, are saying complimentary things of you, then all of a sudden the credibility's there and you assume, wow, if this person knows these people, I can only imagine the other folks that this person knows in their network. So I think that's a really good tactic that you can use to really beat that point home. And again, this is something that actually runs counter to the age discrimination bias, right? Because building a network is something that takes a very long time. Some people are better than others at doing it, but for some positions and some roles, that is the benefit of bringing somebody in that's been working for a long period of time, because they've built many, many relationships over that period, and those relationships have flourished, and hopefully that's a very powerful thing for them that they can share with the organization. Younger people have the potential to build big networks, but it is going to take them time. And a lot, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's easier sometimes to just bring somebody in that can make those calls, send out those emails, and all of a sudden they've got an audience very quickly, and they can help you get to your goals. And it's very important to communicate that when you do sit down in an interview, not just that I have a big network, but I know how to activate my network. I've done it in the past. I can do it again. And part of the benefit of bringing me in is that I can shorten that cycle. Now, a lot of people think that younger people have a lot of energy and they're more aggressive and all these different things, but they're also starting with zero. It's like, they may have all that, but without the resources, and a network is a resource, it's going to take a while. There's that old saying that your net worth is your network. There's a lot of truth in that as well. So not only is that a good opportunity for you, but it's a selling point that actually counteracts the traditional narrative of bringing somebody in that's younger for the role. Now, a third strategy is to be able to demonstrate your adaptability. In other words, show that you're very, very forward thinking. One of the reasons people tend to believe improperly that a young person would have a benefit over an older, more experienced person is that they're more adaptable. They're kind of, hey, I can be molded easy. I can adapt to new technology and new ways of thinking. The idea of an old dog doesn't learn a new trick. That's kind of an old perception that I don't believe in. But those biases do exist implicitly, and one of the ways you can overcome that quickly is just show that you're on the edge of the envelope. And some of the things we're talking about today is a great way to begin, right? I mean, if they go to your profile and they see that, wow, he's got articles on things he's written, he's using video everywhere, she's got a private website, they've got references to all these different people that are influencers and top people in the industry, you go, wow, this person is, they're very forward thinking. They've got a YouTube channel. They're doing podcasts. They're guests on things. That's things that you would expect to bring a younger person in to do. But the older person, if they've adapted to that and they believe in that, they've made the commitment and the effort and they have the time, then you can blow that whole baloney argument right out of the water. So showing your adaptability is really, really an important issue. As we mentioned earlier too, you can also show adaptability by writing an article, and the article could be something like how I learned to take a traditional business and move it into the new age and then multiply that formula successfully 5 times over, right? I'm just kind of making that up on the fly, but you know what I'm saying? You can put a video out you could create on that. You could write a blog article on that, and that can be your reference point so people go, wow, this is really amazing. This person was able to take the best of the old world, combine it with where we're going today, show that transition. And we need people who can think that way as part of the organization. So that's another tactic that you can use to show flexibility and agility. And of course, another thing that you can express through social media, things that you write about, are things that maybe people that are younger would also have a common interest in. So if you're really into sports, if you like kind of more contemporary music, I mean, I'm not a young buck anymore, yet I love all the new music that's coming out. Every type of music, from country to metal to rock to electronic dance music, hip hop. I love all that. Music's been a big part of my life. As a matter of fact, my kids always joke that how do I know all the new artists when they don't know all the new artists in many cases? And that's because I have a youthful energy. But if I don't express that, if I don't show that to anybody, they have no way of knowing that. Once they find out, people are kind of shocked. They go, wow, like you're really into this artist or that artist, or I didn't know you played that sport. I didn't know you did this kind of crazy, some of these crazy fun things on your free time. And as they get to know you better, they start to feel like age doesn't really matter at all. This person has a lot in common with me and would fit in really well. Now, as a fourth strategy, we want to consider really just trying to target opportunities where you would actually be a good fit. Now, I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but this happens all the time. People are getting data feeds. They're looking to become a vice president of sales or CTO or whatever the role is. And they just look at the job itself and they say, hey, that sounds like a cool job. I could do that job. They start applying, and for whatever reason, it's not working out for them. Maybe they think there's some age bias. We don't really know. But then you dig deeper and you find out, well, the average age of the culture is 25 years old, or I don't have anything in common with these people. And you start to think, well, just because an opportunity is a good opportunity doesn't really mean it's a great opportunity for you. And I've been preaching this for years, rather than spend all your time trying to go after everything, let's get more selected. A couple of things. Let's focus on a culture that is maybe more mixed. So there's kind of a nice distribution of people that are younger, kind of in their middle ages, let's say in the 30s and 40s, but they also have a strong presence into the 50s and 60s. And even in the 70s, sometimes you have people that are still working full-time, part-time, they're on advisory roles. But the culture of the organization really does not look at those issues at all. Another thing you could do is look for your next boss and make sure that they're not 20 or 30 years younger than you. Now, if they are looking to bring somebody in who's older because they want to transform that culture, or they need parental guidance, and that sometimes does happen too with super young companies. I see that all the time in the tech world with startups. That's a little bit of a different story, but another thought is find somebody that would actually see you as being youthful and having more energy. So, if you're 50 years old and you feel like you've got some issues, you go work for somebody that is 63 years old who's looking for kind of new ideas and new youth and sees that in you. That's another good strategy. Another variation on that is, rather than just start to look for the job directly, and I've mentioned this in other videos, look at the person or the team you're going to be working for. And before you ever even get into the details of the job and making your business use case on why you're, the best person for the role and what you can do, look for things that you share that are in common, shared principles, shared values, shared belief systems. As well as things that you have in common. And that breaks the bridge a lot of time. Again, we're not talking about the tactical issues of an interview right now. We're talking about how do you get that initial engagement. So if you love golf and you golf all the time and you're 60 years old, and then you find a CEO online who has pictures of golf or skiing and a hobby that you love, reaching out to them on that basis is give you an opportunity to develop a relationship before you even get going. And those people feel a lot closer to you. They'll feel like they like you more, and you can build trust that way. And then they'll tend to overlook some of the other issues if they believe those are even issues. But those are good tactics that you can employ. Again, that's just finding ways to become aligned on a personal level with people. But you'd be surprised. So many people I talk to, they go after anything where they think they could do the job well. And that doesn't mean it's going to be the right opportunity for them at all. I think they'd be much better off being very targeted in their process and reaching out to people directly where there's going to be that connection in the very beginning. And lastly, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't leave out, just don't do something dumb to intentionally or unintentionally shoot yourself in the foot. So for example, if you're going to have a photograph on a social media profile like LinkedIn, and you're reaching out looking for jobs in cultures that are super casual or business casual, don't be dressed in a three-piece suit. This is a mistake I see very, very often, certainly people in their late 50s and their 60s, because we came from a generation where you always wanted to look good. You wanted to look very formal. You wanted to look super professional because that was the look that got you into the C-suite. Today, you would just look a little bit out of place and they would think that you don't get it. So you don't want to overdress that way, but you also, you don't want to be 60 years old sitting around in a hoodie, looking like you're 22 years old. That's not going to benefit you either. Another important thing, to not shoot yourself in the foot, not look for a job and speak in a way that we used to do many, many decades ago. So if you follow this channel, we talk about all that. So when you are reaching out to people, they're going to see the way you talk, the way you reach out, the channels that you use, whether it's through DMing on LinkedIn, it's the marketing documents you create, whether it's a resume, the way you structure your profile. They're going to realize, hey, this person is totally up to speed on everything. And they will make that connection. If you're up to speed on how you do things for a job search, you're going to apply that in biz dev and how you operate in a team in or company and everything else. And it's really important, the language. Today, when I was an undergraduate in college, I was a teaching assistant. We taught business and technical writing. And what worked back then would just not work today, because a formal letter today, when read on a small iPhone, is going to look like a literal novel, and you're going to lose the person instantly. They're just going to delete it. You're off the server and boom, you never existed. There is no piece of paper. There's no gatekeeper to follow up with. It's just you're here and you're gone. Another thing too is in terms of watching this channel to learn the different techniques we're going to go through, is you don't want to sound like you are looking for a job in the 1990s. Now, I see this so often, I can't tell you. It's so common. I get an executive who writes me a letter and it starts off with, "Dear Sir," or "Dear Mr. Tonella," and then it goes, "I am a 20-year seasoned business executive with skills and experiences in A, B, C, and D." Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That is professional. That is courteous and respectful. I see that. It doesn't discourage me. If you feel that you're on the other side of age bias and it's a problem for you, again, try to avoid these little faux pas. Those things do make a difference, because people today can just delete your email, ghost you off of LinkedIn. They don't have to say anything to you personally. They can make a split decision judgment based on language or a picture, and then you're gone. All right, so to recap really quick, here are some of the ways in which you can establish yourself as a leader who is memorable, where people want to engage with you, and age bias not only kind of falls to the side, it almost flips over, and the fact that you've worked for a long time and you have all this experience becomes a benefit over maybe younger people that have great potential, but have not yet put in the actual time and work to get to the level that you've been at. So one is, you have to become a public authority in your marketplace, at least you have to be perceived that way, and you're going to do that by providing information and an online presence that demonstrates that clearly. Number two, you're going to want to make sure that you can demonstrate the strength and the power of your network, because no matter what field you're in, that is a big part of what makes employers attracted to you. it really is an asset. It's an asset that you have built through an investment over time. Number three, you want to show that you have agility and that you have adaptability. And this is important because it's one of those things that they tend to associate with younger people. And if they see that in somebody that's older, then they're kind of getting the best of both worlds. And number four, be a little bit more targeted in the types of opportunities that you go after, not just in terms of what the job function and role is itself, but the type of culture you're going into and the type of people that you're going to be working with. Try to look for teams of people that actually see tremendous value in people who have been working for a long time and have experience, not just in terms of their success functionally, but what they bring to the table in terms of mentorship and fostering kind of goodwill and shared experiences. One of the things that's a real benefit when you're older, and for those watching this video, you're probably nodding your head, but you become more of a mentor. I don't know if it's because you just want to give back naturally because you're getting more close to the finish line than when you began. I don't know, maybe you've been a husband or a wife or a mother or father, and you've had to raise children, and you've developed a sense of wisdom. And a lot of cultures really celebrate that because the power of any company at the end of the day is ultimately the strength of the people in it and how they work and support each other together. So I think those issues are extremely important. And again, finally, don't shoot yourself in the foot by just doing kind of rookie mistakes. And so if you like this, I'd love it if you subscribe. We got some great content that's going to come to you every week through blogs and in the podcast. We're going to cover a variety of things that have to do with everything from recruiters and LinkedIn profiles and how to build a powerful network, how to combat ageism. There's so many different things we're going to talk about that I talk about every day with clients. I just want to share that with people. So please subscribe to be part of that. If you like this video, again, smash the like button. It'll ultimately help me grow this channel. And again, I want to offer you, for watching this, my free 4-step job preparation guide to landing your next dream job. You can find that at www.dreamjobamerica, or if you go to the show notes, there's a link. It's www.dreamjobamerica/guide. It's very thorough, and it's going to provide a general landscape for you. If you're thinking about looking for something new, you're actively looking, or you're even running into a lot of roadblocks, it's going to cover the whole landscape and give you a roadmap for where you are today and maybe other things that you could do to make that process less painful and more exciting to work on every day. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining the video.